My babysitter texted at 9:47 on a Tuesday night. Mrs. Bradley, don't open that door. Please don't. I was in the staff break room at Riverside Hospice in Columbus, still wearing my lavender scrubs and an unwashed Why Mom Works Late coffee mug. I had just lost a 43-year-old patient whose daughter sang hymns beside her bed for 3 hours. My hands were shaking from something that had nothing to do with her. I read the text again. Then once more. Mrs. Croft is inside with a woman I don't recognize. Margot is upstairs. They brought a van. Margot's car keys are gone from the hook. I set the mug down so slowly I almost didn't hear the ceramic touch the counter. My name is Allison Bradley. I'm 41, a hospice nurse manager, the kind of person who double-checks medication charts at midnight because someone might need me to. My wife Margot is 38 and teaches prenatal yoga at a studio on Grandview Avenue. We live in a small brick ranch in Upper Arlington with a 5-year-old named Nora, who still believes the moon follows our car. We have been married for 8 years. I was not, on the night of September 17th, expecting my world to come undone over a text. I called Kayla on the second ring. She is a junior at Ohio State, 21, studying to be a pediatric nurse. She watches Nora 3 afternoons a week and most Tuesday evenings while I work late. Kayla, talk to me. Her voice came out in a whisper. Margot's mom and sister just walked in. They had suitcases. Diane said Margot needed to come home to heal. I closed my eyes. Heal from what? I don't know. Margot came down the stairs in her robe. She looked confused. She asked Diane what was happening. Diane hugged her and said, "Sweetheart, we have made all the decisions." I felt the hallway of my own house narrow even from across town. Where is Nora right now? Upstairs in her bedroom. I put a movie on. I told her Mommy is talking to Grandma. Listen to me carefully. Keep Nora in her room. Do not let anyone into that hallway. If anyone tries, you call 911 first and me second. Yes, ma'am. And Kayla. Yes. Whatever happens in that guest room, you do not see it. You do not open that door. I drove the 15 minutes from Riverside to our street on reflexes alone. Margot's father, Henry Croft, had died in early 2022. Diane had called me 3 weeks after the funeral to thank me for stepping up. At the time I understood it as grief. Now I wondered whether it had been reconnaissance. 6 months earlier, Margot had quietly stopped going to her mother's Sunday brunch. She gave me soft reasons when I asked. Mom is exhausting. She's lonely and trying to run my life. I figured it was the natural push and pull of a 38-year-old woman setting boundaries with a controlling parent. Margot did not tell me she had stopped answering Diane's calls. I did not ask. We were both too proud to push. I parked 2 houses down and slipped through the backyard. The mudroom door was unlocked. I removed my shoes at the threshold. The hallway light was on. 2 leather suitcases stood by the front door. The careful folding of clothing I had never seen at our house. Diane's perfume, the heavy gardenia she wore like a warning, drifted up from the corridor. I slipped into the office at the end of the hall and opened the laptop we kept there for the security cameras. The guest room camera showed Diane, her sister Jenna, and a tall woman in a charcoal blazer I had never seen. They were unpacking paperwork from a leather briefcase onto the guest's bed. The blazer woman slid a stack of pages across the comforter toward Diane. Once she signs these, the disbursement activates in your name as successor trustee. Diane smiled. It was the kind of smile I had seen at every Thanksgiving. And then you have authority over both the principal and the distribution schedule. Jenna produced a second folder. The divorce filing here, the property affidavit here, the medical authorization giving you decision-making authority over Margot's mental health treatment. I drafted it to look like a routine step-down. I stared at the screen. None of those were documents Margot had ever mentioned. Downstairs, Margot's voice carried up faintly. Mom, I don't understand. What is Allison going to think? Allison isn't part of this anymore, sweetheart. We need to get you somewhere safe so you can rest. Safe. That word seemed louder than anything else she said. I nearly walked in. I had one hand on the bedroom door when something my own father said to me on the day I graduated from nursing school surfaced in my chest. Don't move before you understand the entire board, honey. I let go of the handle. I walked back to the office, screenshotted every frame, and emailed the footage to my personal Gmail. I printed nothing. I touched nothing. Then I called my older brother Calvin in Tacoma. He runs a forensic accounting practice and remembers every promise my mother-in-law ever made. Allie, I need you awake. I am now. I told him what I had seen. There was a very long pause. Allie read Henry's trust. Page 14, subsection 6. I pulled the fireproof box from beneath the office bookshelf. The document was exactly as I remembered. Henry had left the family cabin and a portfolio of stocks to Margot, to be held in trust until her 35th birthday, with a stipulation I had skimmed past the first time. Disbursement required either documented estrangement from the marital partner lasting longer than 12 months, or a signed affidavit from the trustee that the marital relationship had irretrievably broken. The trustee was Diane. I sat back on my heels. Diane had not been driving Margot to her house to heal. Diane had been engineering her to leave. My phone buzzed. A text from Margot. Mom says I should rest. Can you pick up Nora from school tomorrow? I love you. I stared at it. The grammar was hers. The voice was not. I typed back, of course, see you in the morning. Then I switched to the garage camera. At 10:14 p.m., Margot walked out to the driveway. Diane's hand was on her elbow. Margot's shoulders were trembling. Jenna carried a small overnight bag. The Blazer woman was already in a black Audi idling by the curb. Margot did not look back at the house. I drove to Riverside. I sat in the dark of the parking lot and tried to remember how to be a person. At 3 a.m., I called the family attorney I trusted. His name is Howard Pike. He handled Henry's estate. Howard. Allison. Did Henry ever amend that trust? No. Did Diane ever have any kind of authorization to make medical decisions on Margot's behalf? Absolutely not. Margot is a competent adult. I told him about the medical authorization. There was a long silence. What she built is paper fraud. Will Margot face criminal exposure if she signed anything in that guest room? No. Margot is a victim. The signature was induced under duress. The question is whether we can prove duress. That Saturday, while Diane and Jenna moved Margot's yoga mat and her good crystal vase into a rental van at Diane's house in Bexley, Kayla met me at a Dutch Brothers off Bethel Road. She was pale. She slid a sheet of lined paper across the table. I wrote down what I heard. Her handwriting was careful. Diane told Margot that you were having an affair with a doctor at the hospice. She said you had been seen coming out of a hotel near the airport with a man named Greg. She said Margot should not confront you yet. She said you were planning to take Nora and disappear. I had never been to a hotel near the airport. I do not know anyone named Greg. Diane had built a fictional husband out of nothing, and my wife was sleeping in her guest room because of it. We filed an emergency petition in Franklin County Common Pleas Court 3 days later. Not for divorce. For Margot. The petition was to declare the guardianship authorization Diane was preparing invalid. Howard told me we had a strong case if we could prove Margot was not acting of her own free will. Margot called me the morning of the hearing. She sounded small. Allison, I don't know who to believe. Mom says you haven't loved me for 2 years. Margot, what movie did Nora watch last Tuesday? A pause. The one with the blue bunny. Yes. And who has been in the room every night when she falls asleep? A long silence. I don't want to lose you. You won't. But you are going to have to choose. The courtroom was nearly empty on a Wednesday morning in early October. Margot walked in wearing the green jacket I had bought her for our anniversary. She did not look at her mother. Judge Olu Akin was a quiet woman in her 60s who had a reputation for not tolerating manipulation. Howard put Margot on the stand first. She told the court that her mother had spent 6 months telling her I was unfaithful, that I had cut her off from her friends, that I had financial control she did not know about. Margot said none of it was true. She said she did not know why she had believed it. Judge Akin nodded slowly. Was there ever a moment you thought to verify anything yourself? Margot's voice cracked. No, Your Honor. I trusted her. Kayla testified next. She told the court about the Tuesday night, the suitcase, the text, the Blazer woman she did not recognize. She told the court about the medical authorization being prepared for Diane's signature. Howard entered the security footage I had saved. The 4-camera grid showed the guest bedroom, the garage, the kitchen, the front porch. Judge Akin watched each clip without visible reaction. When the clip of the blazer woman explaining the disbursement played, the judge leaned forward a quarter inch. Howard finished by introducing Henry's original trust and Diane's formal request to Margot dated 8 weeks earlier. This one demanded that Margot leave our home and enroll in a residential healing program Diane had researched in Sedona, Arizona. There was no program. The address was a rental property owned by Jenna's boyfriend. Judge Akin did not announce her ruling that day. She recessed for 30 minutes. When she returned, her voice carried the patient weight of someone who had heard this exact manipulation in 100 forms. The court finds that Diane Croft acted in direct violation of Ohio fiduciary law. The medical authorization she prepared under Margot's name, signed while Margot was in a state of repeated psychological distress, is invalid. The trust disbursement clause Mrs. Croft attempted to enforce is suspended pending full review. The petition for guardianship is denied in its entirety. She paused. Mr. Pike, please file the appropriate referral with the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office for review of potential financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Diane's color drained. I kept my eyes on Margot, who was crying so quietly that only the people in the front row could see it. Outside the courthouse, Jenna tried to speak to Margot. Margot held up one hand. Not today. Diane walked past me without looking up. I did not say a word. Some justice arrives quietly, and the loudest version is rarely the truest. That night, Margot and I sat on the porch with 2 cups of chamomile tea. Nora was asleep. We did not talk about Henry's money. We did not talk about Diane's plan. We talked about how Margot had felt small for 6 months without telling me. We talked about how I had assumed she was fine because she said she was fine. We talked about how quiet a marriage can become when both people are too proud to say they are drowning. We agreed to couples therapy on Tuesdays. We agreed that Kayla could pick Nora up on the days I worked late. We agreed Diane could see Nora once a month supervised in a public place for 2 hours. A year later, Margot still teaches yoga. She leads a Tuesday evening class for trauma survivors at a community center near Wineland Park. She is the one who suggested I volunteer there on my days off. Once a month, Kayla, who is now a pediatric nurse at Nationwide Children's, brings her younger sister to the studio. The 4 of us eat dinner afterward. Nora calls her Kayla Miss K. The trust money, when it eventually cleared probate, went straight into a college fund for Nora. Margot still does not want to touch it. Neither do I. The money is not the point. The point is that Margot is allowed to choose what happens in her own house. Some mornings I still pass Diane's big brick house on my way to a home visit. The curtains are always closed now. I do not slow down. I never will. If you have ever had a moment when you realize that the person closest to your family was quietly deciding your future for you, I would love to hear your story in the comments. Until next time, take good care of yourself. Some doors stay closed for a reason, but you can always choose to open a different one.